All right. Well, good evening, everybody. Looks like my webcam is off. Oh, let me see what I can do to fix that. Yes, hello everyone. I am Jay. Yeah, I can't see my face either. Let me just double check to see if my my cat may have gone and tugged at my little webcam here. Just give me a second. All right. Well, I have no idea why the webcam isn't working. Let's see, HD web camera. Go ahead and activate it. Okay, there we go. Just had to turn it back on, turn it back off again. There we go. Hello, Nelson. Good to see you. Him, Jay. Good to see you too. All right, man. Yeah, a little bit of technical difficulties there with the webcam, but that's all right. All right. Well, good. Well, I'm glad everything is up and running. It is Thursday, which means it's time for .NET and Scotch. Tonight, we're actually going to be doing some work on a production Petabridge Akka.NET application. We're basically doing, so we launched this, I guess the first version of this, I think it was September 30th last year is when it went live. We are in the process of doing a major re-architecture in order to support new types of products. And I'll go ahead and kind of walk through a little bit about what we're going to try to do on the stream tonight. And I'm going to plan on spending some time working on this over the next several streams. Since I have a lot of, during the day, I have a lot of Akka.NET work I have to do. I spent most of this week handling Akka.NET support issues, managing my team, and then also doing some R&D on Phobos, which is our big sort of APM product for Akka.NET. So in order for us to go ahead and try to make some forward progress on Sdkbin, which is going to be a big part of how we actually deliver our support and our Phobos sales to customers, I actually have to eke out some time to do it. And I decided I'm going to go ahead and use some of my time on the stream to do it tonight. Okay, let me go ahead and lower the music volume just a little bit here. Okay, there we go. Maybe that's a little too low, but yeah, I can turn it up just a tad. There we go. That should be all right. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and quit out a PowerPoint here. Just want to go ahead and use that for my intro. Now, let me see if my solution loaded correctly. No, it didn't. So I'll have to fix that. I'm in the process of trying to rename a project in Writer here, which is a little bit harder than it should be. This is Sdkbin's website. This is live right now, sdkbin.com. I'm going to log into it in just a second here. First thing I want to go ahead and point out, though, is tonight's bourbon that I'm going to go ahead and drink. This is Eagle Rare. Eagle Rare is made by Buffalo Trace, so the same company that's behind Blanton's and Pappy Van Winkle and all that good stuff. Eagle Rare is relatively tough to track down in Texas. It's pretty easy to find it in places like California. Yes, I brought out the good stuff. So Eagle Rare is aged for 10 years, and it's an allocated bottle, which makes it pretty tough to find. However, if you do find it, it's typically not that expensive. If you go to a place like Costco in a state where they are allowed to sell alcohol there, they'll sell it to you at MSRP, which is about $25, $26 a bottle. For a 10-year-old bourbon, that's a fantastic deal. On the secondary market, where if you go ahead and buy it online, they might mark it up as high as $60, $70. So you want to go ahead and be a little careful about where you buy from. I have a wholesaler that I've bought from in California before. I'll buy a case of that stuff sometimes because both me and my father-in-law really like to drink it. And yeah, I can get it usually for about $26 a pop. So go ahead and smell it. It's got sweet caramel notes on the nose. Now, I can definitely taste a little bit of spice on there. I get a tiny amount. Might be because I had barbecue chicken wings for dinner. I get a tiny amount of anise actually on the nose here. That's like black licorice. This is sort of the flavor from that. I get a very not an overwhelming amount of it, but a tiny amount. Also definitely get some nice, let's say like brown sugar sort of notes there as well. And there's one other thing on the tip of my tongue. Might be actually some of the corn that I can go ahead and taste on there. But anyway, it's a fantastic drink, one of the best. Hey man, yeah, chicken wings. Ain't nothing wrong with a chicken wing. All right, so this is Sdkbin, and let me go ahead and talk a little bit about what I'm gonna try to do with it. So Sdkbin, if we go ahead and take a look at browse products, is meant to be a marketplace. You can think of it as NuGet meets the App Store. So I have, inside here, I have my Phobos product, which is published by Petabridge, and I can see a list of our websites on here. So Aka.net Home, Petabridge Home. I can go ahead and see our list of products. I can go down this little buy path right here that will allow me to go ahead and register a new account, or I can log into an existing one. I can go ahead and purchase using your credit card, and that'll go ahead and automatically provision. Hey, Rook, good to see you. That'll go ahead and automatically provision a little product for me. If I go ahead and log in as a customer, yep, there we go, that should work. If I go ahead and log in as a customer, I can see that my license expires on September 30th, 2021. It's set to auto renew right now. I'm billing myself $10 a year for it just because this is our internal copy. And I can go ahead and take a look at all the packages that are included here. And I can go ahead and see all these details about how to try to install it. And I can go ahead and see some package install statistics and all that good stuff. So this is Sdkbin. It probably took us about 7 or 8 months to build it. I didn't write very much of the code. Most of what I wrote for Sdkbin's original version was I wrote all the Pulumi infrastructure for doing continuous deployment for it. And I also spec'd out all the UI. So I kind of designed the UX. It was members of our engineering team here at Petabridge who built it. And we were just trying to kind of get something out to market that could process orders and fulfill orders for this NuGet package system right away. And the system's done a pretty good job of being able to support that. However, our domain model that we used to go ahead and model all that stuff is very highly coupled to the semantics of NuGet and our sales process for being able to fulfill Phobos. So while it would be very easy for us to go and add additional products that we can distribute via NuGet, one of the big challenges that we have is the next product that we want to make available on the Sdkbin marketplace for Petabridge, for us, is we want to be able to actually sell our support plans through Sdkbin. Now, the big idea behind Sdkbin long-term is it's meant to be a platform for other people who want to start up software businesses, in particular open source ones. This is kind of the group that we really want to cater to. We want to make it really easy for them to be able to go ahead and start selling value-added products and services to the consumers of the open source. They can try to make those open source projects more sustainable. Well, the lowest barrier to entry thing you can sell is a support plan. And so support plans basically need to have a subscription amount. Support plans use what's called utilization-based billing, meaning that usually you buy a fixed amount of, let's say, hours or incidents. Kind of depends on what your unit of work is. Here at Petabridge, we sell hours. So a typical support plan for an Aka.net support plan here at Petabridge might cost, let's say, $7,200 a year. And as a result of that, you get 24 cumulative support hours you can use over the entire 12 months, and it's use it or lose it. And we guarantee a 1 business day service level agreement to go ahead and respond to any issues that might come up. And we have a fairly large number of support plan customers right now. And one of the things that we have to do manually is we have to go ahead and manually compute statements from Freshdesk, which is our support ticketing system. So Freshdesk and Zendesk are all kind of comparable. And that is extremely manual and very annoying. We want to go ahead and offer a turnkey way to go ahead and show customers, here's all the tickets you submitted, here's where they are in terms of open, closed, resolved. And here is the here's the total amount of hours your team has used. That way, customers will be more inclined to go ahead and use their plan more frequently. Customers are more inclined to use it when they know how many hours are remaining on it. And then on top of that, it'll help automate those parts of our business life cycle. In terms of handling overages, if a customer ends up using more hours than they originally bought, we can build them an overage. We can go ahead and offer detailed statements and invoice history that is all kind of captured automatically. Then on top of that, we're planning on bolting on kind of an interface on Sdkbin in front of platforms like Freshdesk or Zendesk. And we are going to make it so the customer can go ahead and choose which members of their software development team need to be added to the support plan. Right now, a member on the Petabridge operations team has to work with those customers to say, all right, which people in your organization need to be invited onto our Freshdesk system, and people lose credentials and all sorts of other stuff. We eventually want to go ahead and make it so the customer is responsible for doing that rather than us. So that's kind of what we're aiming to do. Sdkbin has a really good multi-tenancy model in terms of being able to support multiple publishers and customers with multiple users and being able to buy multiple products from different vendors. Our goal is to go ahead and try to make this sort of a much more far-reaching and broader platform over several years. But where we're at with it right now is before we start offering, let's say, access to third-party publishers, we want to go ahead and make sure that the platform works really well for us and for our own customers. We've already found a number of user experience issues that we've fixed since September of last year. Good example, we discovered that we need to have a way for users to be able to submit billing inquiries through the site. All sorts of stuff that seems obvious in hindsight once you add it, but you didn't know you needed it until users started requesting it. And so there's a lot of different new facets we have to go and add to our domain. And so our domain model that we use to kind of launch our MVP here is just simply not, I'd say not complex enough, probably isn't the right way to phrase that, but it's basically not able to kind of abstract away the fulfillment details of how customers consume that product or the billing details of how they pay for it. It's too sort of narrowly focused on annual subscriptions right now. We need to go ahead and make it a little bit broader so we can handle utilization-based billing, monthly billing. We want to be able to handle support for things like credit memos, discount codes. We want to be able to allow the publishers who are selling products to the platform be able to control issuing credit to their own customers and that type of thing as well. So these are all some of the issues we have to go ahead and add support for in Sdkbin. And another important one I've completely neglected to mention. Right now, all of the default billing on Sdkbin is via credit card. However, a lot of our customers who actually consume Phobos through Sdkbin actually pay via purchase orders. And that's because that's what the procurement process requires. So we need to have the ability to go ahead and automate that workflow potentially through Sdkbin as well. So what I've just kind of done is given you the state of here's where Sdkbin is, and then here's where we want to go, and here's how much is kind of between us and there. And I'll go ahead and step into our domain model and walk through some of that. And the domain model I'm building is basically in a new set of middleware projects that I'm creating. And it should make it very kind of easy for us to go ahead and introduce this into our existing Sdkbin apps, which are all running on Azure. But right now, I'm basically in the process of doing event storming and validating that the models that I want to build are done correctly is kind of what I'm doing. And that's what we're going to do together tonight as part of a live coding experience on the stream. Now, before I dive any further into Sdkbin, I wanted to talk about an interesting Akka.net conversation I had with Jeff Fritz on Twitter today. So Jeff Fritz is probably the biggest streamer at Microsoft. So C# Fritz, he's featured Akka.net a number of times, and he's been a great help to a lot of members of the .NET community. I saw this morning that Jeff basically mentioned that he was really struggling with Akka over the last week. Trying to connect Akka.net to an ASP.NET Core application to work with Entity Framework results in hundreds of lines of codes, writing indirections to run a simple insert query. Dependency injection of Entity Framework context feels broken. Now, my take on this is, I kind of raised my eyebrow at that. I was like, well, inside Sdkbin's production code right now, we have actors that do this, and they do it in about, you know, maybe 6 lines of code. So why would you need hundreds of lines of code to be able to go ahead and do this? It doesn't necessarily, didn't click with me. So I engaged with Jeff about some of the details around dependency injection, entity framework, and Akka.NET. But here's the big point I kind of really wanted to zone in on for tonight, which is, I think, kind of indicative of a bit of a systemic problem in terms of the attitude of the .NET community as a whole, which is handing off to Akka and doing all the things by hand that ASP.NET does for me automatically feels like I'm using the frameworks wrong. What he's referring to in this case, if I go and pull up the blog post he referenced on how to use Entity Framework for Akka.NET, is that, and by the way, our code that we use inside, our code that we go ahead and use inside Sdkbin right now looks very similar to this, where we basically go and we pass in an iService provider, and we go ahead and we create a scope. We go ahead and resolve our dependency, we do some work, and then we dispose it at the end of this using block. And this is basically, oh, you want a link? Yeah, sure. Sorry about that. There you go, Nelson. So, long story short, this is pretty similar to what we do inside Sdkbin. Now, this was all written back in 2018 before we added the Akka.dependency injection library, which can help automate some of this. Whereas I think Havret, the author who wrote this, had to manually set this up before. We can now do this automatically using the Akka.dependency injection library. But what Jeff is referring to is that in his code, he has to go ahead and manually create a scope, resolve a dependency, and then dispose the scope. He's basically asking, why do I have to have this boilerplate versus ASP.NET Core, which can just basically pass in this bookstore context, automatically create a transient scope, and dispose it behind the scenes for me? And this is what I tried to go ahead and answer down here. This is sort of the answer I tried to give. And I can go ahead and drop a link to the tweet in here too, if you want to see the original thread. But what I tried to answer here is that, well, the difference is that in ASP.NET Core, you have the luxury of knowing what the lifetime of all your objects are. A HTTP request handled via a controller or a Signal or a Razor page or a Signal or hub, those are all request scoped objects. They're not kept alive for very long. So injecting a bunch of dependencies into it and then disposing them once the request is fulfilled is pretty straightforward there. Akka.NET does not have that luxury because actor lifetime is determined by your own code. It's determined by the user code. So therefore, we basically just kind of hand the stick over to the end users and say, listen, you tell us when this resource should be disposed and when you need access to it. And we'll give you the tools to do that. But we're not going to try to be very opinionated about it. We want to go ahead and just give you a relatively generalized way of being able to go ahead and do that. That's what we're trying to go ahead and sort of arrange here. Now, I mentioned maybe one day in the future it'd be possible for us to create a new scope each time an actor processes a message. But you got to bear in mind, actors, like one HTTP request that goes into an Akka.NET actor system might kick off tens of thousands of Akka.NET actor messages. Going and basically creating a bunch of scope objects for each of those could actually be quite expensive from an allocation and garbage collection standpoint. So there's a bit of a degree of overhead kind of issue with some of that. But the greater point I kind of wanted to drill in on is I think that Akka.NET certainly needs to do a better job kind of probably explaining this type of stuff in our documentation. That's something we could certainly do a better job on, of kind of saying, hey, these are some of the differences between Akka.NET and ASP.NET. But the one thing I kind of resent a little bit about the .NET ecosystem as a whole is this attitude's pretty common. That there is the one true way to do things in our ecosystem, and it is largely determined by the behavior of ASP.NET or the Microsoft.extensions.blah library, or insert a number of other different abstractions. And so the idea that we have as a ecosystem, that we basically have to go ahead and kind of group our work around a handful of, let's say, standard patterns and practices that are all basically kind of originating from a handful of popular frameworks, and that if you don't behave that way, then you must be doing it wrong. I kind of feel like is an attitude that helps to some extent. On the one hand, it's like, I get the idea that you want to go ahead and have a set of expectations on how tools work and have those tools meet them. But on the other hand, if you expect that every tool does everything the exact same way, then it's not very easy to innovate inside the software ecosystem. Because, like I tried to spell out in this little Twitter thread here, we have a very good reason for not doing it this way, which is that users control the lifetime of their objects in Akka.net, whereas in ASP.net, lifetime is basically determined by the duration of the HTTP request and however long it takes to actually complete it, or the signal or hub, as the case may be. But there's got to be room, in my opinion, for different models to basically work inside the ecosystem. And you want to go ahead and approach each, let's say, each framework and each set of tools and each paradigm, maybe with a set of expectations that, well, generally speaking, there's going to be like 80% overlap in how things are done. You also want to go ahead and allow some room. It's like, maybe there's a reason why things might be done differently here, and it might be a good idea to go ahead and get to the bottom of why that is. I'll give you another example of, let's say, behavioral differences between comparable technologies inside the .NET ecosystem. So if we go ahead and take a look at something like, I'll go ahead and throw out the Saturn and SafeStat from the F# crew. I poked around with that a little bit, and yes, it does use Kestrel under the hood for its self-hosting model, I believe. But by and large, the way you gotta build app experiences there is a very different animal from what you do with something like Blazor and so forth inside the or just even traditional sort of ASP.NET technology. This is the whole Saturn type stuff, and it's really cool. And that innovation exists because someone chose to do things differently than what everyone else is doing. And I think that's kind of spelled out much more clearly because it's an apples to apples comparison. You're comparing two different web frameworks, whereas this is an actor framework versus a web framework. But I basically think this attitude of the way Microsoft does this the right way, and if you do it any other way, it must be wrong, is something that we should. I'm not necessarily, by the way, that may not be the way Jeff was thinking about it, but that's the way it's been. That's the way it's been kind of expressed to me before, which is your thing doesn't behave the way these other popular technologies do in Microsoft's technology ecosystem. Therefore, you're wrong. And what I'm basically saying is, no, there should be room for different choices to be made there, and there might be very good reasons for it. We should go ahead and kind of allow for the possibility that those reasons are valid. So yeah. Rook, let's see. I get what you're saying, but if everyone uses that logic, we'll have different standards for each framework. And by everyone using the same standard, we have a lower cost and faster startup because we already learned how to do it. I agree that it makes sense to go ahead and repurpose, let's say, common learnings throughout the ecosystem, but everything kind of has to be done in a degree of moderation here, which is basically to say, having a standard way of doing, let's say, for instance, dependency injection. Okay. That resolved a really nasty problem, which, speaking from experience, was we had to go ahead and write PI plugins for like 12 different libraries. And to be honest, we probably didn't need that in the .NET ecosystem. But in the case of, let's say, consuming dependency injection here, DI in .NET is very heavily structured around ASP.NET because that's the primary consumer of those libraries inside all of our inside our ecosystem. Well, Akka.net's like sort of lifecycle model just does not match those semantics. That's why we need to do things a little bit differently here. So there might be very good reasons why things are done differently. And just like that thread that Bartosz Adamowski put out yesterday on Twitter, which is that if everyone says to you, don't reinvent the wheel, we would never end up with better wheels. I find that philosophy is true here too, is that there does need to be some innovation in order to go ahead and try to find not just better ways of doing things, but appropriate ways of doing things too. And the way that works for ASP.NET Core probably won't work for Akka.net. And that doesn't mean the model is bad in either use case. It just means that there's different circumstances that kind of affect the way you just consume. Let's see. H3. F# being left in the wilderness by Microsoft is the best thing that could have happened to it. You know, there's actually a degree of truth to that. Don Syme, in some of his really early talks about F#, uses the term mimetic independence, which basically means that Microsoft was able to go ahead and, well, let me rephrase it. F# was basically able to strike out on its own and kind of start up its own little community and do its own thing with fairly minimal interference from Microsoft product groups and product marketing organizations. And that might have actually worked to its benefit in terms of helping it build a stronger, more standalone community. And so there's some benefit to be there is some benefit to that. In other words, that what H3 is saying, even though it might sound like a pithy dunk, actually might be literally true. I think if Microsoft abandoned .NET, it would be probably catastrophic. Although if a group like, let's say, the Xamarin people were still around, it'd probably be okay. Without them, though, there's no one really to kind of fill in that void. So there is a bit of an issue there. I see someone's lighting me up on Twitter. All right. And then I find C# Fritz to be a bit boorish. You know, I've watched his stream. I've watched his stream a number of times. And I think the guy does some really fun and entertaining stuff. And he's actually the person who kind of inspired me to get started doing streaming as well. I figured, you know, he makes it look fun and exciting. Maybe that would work for me too. But that being said, not everybody has to be everybody else's cup of tea. All right. So on that note, why don't we go ahead and get started with doing a little bit of event sourcing all around Akka.net and Sdkbin. All right. So let me go ahead and close that. All right. So I'll show you briefly what I've been working on. I've got one screen over here, the whole bunch of my protocol classes. I'll probably bring that over. First thing I should probably do is get my unit test project to go ahead and work on. H3. Some of the Xamarin folks are at the edge with Wilderness Labs, and I'm all about it. I think I saw you upload an image the other day where you're using some of their IoT stuff, right? And actually, if you want to go ahead and explain what Wilderness Labs is, that'd be cool. I think there are a lot of other people on the stream who'd love to hear about it. Let's see. I need to figure out how to add my existing project. Let's see. Add existing project. There we go. Okay. Products.domain.test. Okay. All right, let's try building that. You're doing a talk about Wilderness Labs on July 29th for a .NET Focus on F# event. Well, that sounds like fun. All right. So I'm in the process of writing some of my very first tests for this little project here. But I'm going to go ahead and walk you through what I've got. So in terms of Sdkbin's domain, there's a lot more things to our domain than what is shown on screen here so far. But I'm going to go ahead and kind of introduce you to the patterns I'm working on. I have this sdkbin.common.abstractions. And by the way, I've been doing event storming here, which means that I'm in the process of kind of discovering the events that drive my domain based on our first implementation of this that we have so far. And based on the things that are missing from our current implementation, I've come up with some models that we want to go ahead and use to express some of the functionality that we want to try to add. So in our common, so basically what I have here is a bunch of these sdkbin.blank.abstractions. What belongs in these projects, these abstraction projects, are our standard interfaces that get used by, okay, H3, you dropped the link to, go ahead and click on that. All right, so this is H3's work that he's been doing with some of the Wilderness Lab stuff. So I'll go ahead and like that. Give it a little retweet love. Folks can check that out in chat. Now, what I was talking a bit about in terms of our solution is I have these sdkbin.blank.abstractions. These are meant to be kind of our service interface definitions is what's going on here, along with some of our messaging protocol. So my common library, one thing that we want to go ahead and keep track of is change tracking. We need this for audibility purposes, but it also is just kind of used to provide a bit of a very simplistic change log for users. Now, one thing I should point out about my design methodology here in terms of how I'm doing all this work. This project failed to load. Oh no, it's loaded now. Okay, good, that's fine. One thing I should go ahead and point out about the way I'm kind of modeling all this is I'm doing everything in memory first. And I'm basically validating my model with just a combination of unit tests and some integration tests. There is zero persistence or serialization being done yet. My goal is to basically validate my domain model using 100% in memory with Akka.NET Actors programming. Once I'm happy that I can kind of express all the things I need to, and I'm going to probably do a little bit of integration work to try to get this stuff integrated into our existing UIs that we have now. Once I'm happy that all this is working to my satisfaction, I'm going to go ahead and write a persistence model using Akka.persistence and a little bit of SQL Server for most of this stuff. And so it should all be pretty smooth once that's done. So I'm basically just kind of doing event storming with a bit of modeling along the way. So I have a couple of common abstractions that are going to be used. These are things that are somewhat domain independent. So change logs are one example. There's lots of different objects that it might require a change log. So publishers have the ability to go and modify products. So I can go through and do things like change the logo, or I could add a new pricing plan, or I could actually get rid of a pricing plan if I want. Rook, let's see. Are you still taking questions regarding the questions about Akka.NET you were too afraid to ask? Oh, absolutely. I've got some that people sent me on Twitter, but definitely I'm looking for more. So if you have some that you want me to bring up for when I do that video, please go ahead and drop them in chat, and I'll make sure I copy those to my maybe my Slack channel or something. So I'll go ahead and make sure we include them. But yeah, any questions you might have, please let me know. Nope, let me get rid of that. We have some other common parts of our domain like display text. We need this for rendering all sorts of things on the website. Things like release notes for products. We need to be able to go ahead and display things like terms of service, licenses, all that sort of stuff. We want to have a couple of different syntax flavors, so plain, markdown, HTML, and so that's one thing we need. We need the ability to go ahead and reason about files that are stored inside our CDN. This includes NuGet packages as well as things like images. We might allow people to go ahead and upload, I don't know, PDF documents and stuff like that at some point too. That's kind of what this is about. And this is a website, which is basically just kind of used to represent like one of these little links. So I go back to Sdkbin. These links right here would be website objects inside Sdkbin. So there's a number of different objects that might all require that. That's why this all kind of belongs in a common package. And then we take a look at our domains. We have organizations, we have payments. Payment intent service doesn't have much in it right now. And then the one that we've been focusing on primarily is products. So I'll show you, for example, here. I have an iProduct write service and iProduct query service. This is kind of my CQRS stuff behind the scenes here. Although the way I'm implementing it is probably not, strictly speaking, probably not going to be legit CQRS because we're kind of using pretty much the same model for reads and writes. The difference is when I get a request to go ahead and do a read, I'm able to go ahead and in memory basically carve out a little data, like a mutable data transfer object, fire that back over the wire, and then just get on with my work. So we're not doing CQRS like how we have in some of our other code samples, where like I'm persisting an event and then someone else is receiving a copy of it and using that to produce a projection. We might do some of that. I haven't quite gotten that far on the domain modeling yet, but that's kind of not how I planned on doing it so far. All right, Rook, I'm going to go ahead and answer your Akka.NET questions while I'm here. Question 1, can a receive actor communicate with an untyped actor? Oh, absolutely. Yes. Basically, you can't really tell what the implementation type is when you're looking at an iActorRef. It could be a receive actor, it could be an FSM, a finite state machine. It could also be an untyped actor. So none of that stuff really has any bearing from the point of view of the actor reference. The actor reference is both location transparent, meaning you don't know necessarily where that actor might be hosted inside your cluster, but it's also implementation transparent, which means that the underlying class that is being pointed to by the actor reference, you don't necessarily need to know what its implementation type is. In Akka typed, which is basically the big 2.0 release we're going to do next year, actor references are going to go ahead and begin introducing a protocol. I'll give you an example of what that looks like. These are how I define protocols in Akka.NET. So this is the one that I'm primarily working on. This is our product update protocol. And this represents all the wire types used to make changes to products behind the scenes. So I'm going to go ahead and create a static class here, and all of my wire types are all going to be nested inside the static class. That way, when I'm taking a look at, let's say, my code, what an actor does or does not handle, it's pretty clear, like this message belongs to the product update protocol, and blah, blah, blah. And then I have a marker interface right here that basically indicates which all these messages are part of this protocol. This is going to be used later by the Akka.NET serializer. And it's going to go ahead and have like a little protobuf scheme that I'm going to map these messages to. I don't need to worry about that yet, but that is something I'm going to be able to go and support. And then this I with product ID message is from our common abstractions library. Basically, anytime someone's trying to make a query about a specific product, that might be for reasons that amount to billing, fulfillment. There might also be some other automated tasks that kind of run behind the scenes for a product, such as we might periodically email out, let's say, like renewal notices to customers and that sort of thing. Any message that needs to be routed to a product-specific actor is probably going to be decorated with this interface. This is kind of used for routing purposes. It's like a routing instruction, basically, is what it is. And so then I have all my message types down here. So a typed actor, you would basically have, let's say, iActorRef, and it would go ahead and show, like, it takes a message that implements this interface. And so the only messages you can send to the actor reference have to be ones that implement this interface. And then the sender might go ahead and say, all right, I can send you a message using this interface, but I received one using this interface. And this is designed to go ahead and add type cohesion to Akka.NET. This is something that we're going to try to release next year, is what we're ideally shooting for here. And there's a lot of big changes I want to make to Akka.NET's internals to support that. In particular, I want to go ahead and move Akka.NET 2.0 onto .NET 6. And that way we can take advantage of a lot of the low-level performance primitives that we aren't using right now because we're still supporting a lot of .NET Framework customers. And now in terms of what we're going to do to support .NET Framework customers going forward, I'm not sure. It kind of depends on, we have, I'd say a lot of our paying customers are on .NET Framework, so we're probably going to have to find a way to support that in perpetuity. It might mean some support for Akka.NET 1.5 and then some for 2.0 for two discrete groups of customers. That might increase our support burden for a little while, but we'll see how it goes. All right, question 2. In Akka.NET Persistence, can messages and snapshots be serialized to JSON XML? Yes, by default, for a long time, messages and snapshots were serialized as JSON. In fact, if I go ahead and pull up, do I have my SQLite browser on here? I do. All right, let me pull this up. Let's see, open database only. Let's see, repositories. If I go to Headbridge, go to my design patterns course. This is our code sample from our actual training that we do. I think it's in here. Yeah, here we go. if I go to browse data, event journal, you can see that this is basically a chat message and it's being saved as a little JSON object here. And then my little snapshot is basically a custom bespoke, like sorted collection. That's also being saved as a JSON snapshot. We've actually largely done away with that in most of Akadot Persistence because this format makes it very difficult for us to go ahead and version and make changes to Akadot Persistence itself. We wrap most of those messages inside a protobuf envelope now, and so we serialize them in a binary format. So we've changed that a little bit, but that can still be customized inside Akka.net if need be. All right. So this is our product update protocol, which includes messages for things like create a new product. And by the way, all my messages are defined as immutable structs in C# 9. And the reason why I'm doing that is I want to be able to go ahead and use a bit of a builder pattern for being able to build up these complicated domain objects. A product, like if I go to our product view down here, now one of the things I had to do that was really ugly, I came to the conclusion this was the best way of doing this, is I actually had to go ahead and make, even though I've got nullability turned off, I had to make some of these properties nullable in order to basically treat them like option type, meaning this property or none of the properties in it might not be set yet. That's somewhat inconvenient, but ultimately was the simplest way to go ahead and express this problem. Let's see, what's this complaining about? Oh, it's never instantiated. Okay, that's fine. So this product view takes a product ID. We have a product publish status, which means that someone might be in the process of trying to create this product, but it may not be visible to customers yet. So a good example from a domain point of view is if we're trying to sell a new NuGet based product to an end user or to a group of end users, and before you can actually sell that product to anybody, we have to be able to go and guarantee you've actually published at least one NuGet package to what's called your publisher feed. So your publisher feed is basically a special URL you're given that says you can go ahead and push new NuGet packages to here. Those packages will then be stored on Sdkbin CDN, is basically what it's going to go ahead and say when that occurs. Well, before you can actually make that product available to end users, we're going to say, listen, you have to have published at least one package before you can actually start selling this to people. So that's one of the things that our fulfillment model is going to go ahead and have to keep track of here. Next, we have things like price plans. Before you can start selling this product to customers, you have to define at least one pricing plan. So you might have multiple different pricing plans. For a good example, maybe you have a monthly pricing plan, but then you also have an annual one. So that's another example of something that we could do. Then we have to have product terms. You have to go ahead and upload a license agreement for people who want to use your product. Product display data. You need to go ahead and add at least a little bit of information about your product, a logo. You probably need to go ahead and upload some other material, that type of thing. So there's all sorts of little tidbits that basically we want to try to validate via our model. Now, if I keep going here, this is sort of our product view. This is what we're trying to build. We have this product write service that we're going to use to build it. And we're going to take these iProduct update messages and wrap them inside a user change event. This user change event basically has a user's identity, has a little message, a little payload, an IP address, a date time, and actually I guess I should make this a date time offset probably. Yeah, I should really standardize on that. All right, we're gonna go ahead and include all that. And basically this is gonna go ahead and say, here's the person who tried to modify it. This data is designed to help us produce a really good audit trail. That's what that's for. So we want to be able to go ahead and use that to kind of signify, here's what this user did and why they did it. Let's see. Next, I'm going to go ahead and go to my products.domain. This is where we're trying to do some concrete implementation work now. So I've done some diagrams kind of on in SmartDraw to go ahead and kind of model what we're doing. So we have this product state record right here. This is going to kind of represent the cumulative state of all of these different events. And this product state is going to maintain a copy of our product view. It's going to keep a copy of our fulfillment request. This fulfillment request is marked as complete once we know the user has either, let's say if you're doing a NuGet product, your fulfillment request is complete once you've successfully uploaded at least one package. If you're trying to sell a support plan, your fulfillment request is complete once you've successfully connected one of our supported customer service platforms. So Freshdesk or Zendesk, maybe we'll even build one day, who knows. But basically once you connect to one of those, the fulfillment request is marked as complete. That's required before you can begin selling the product. Then we have a couple little enums here for just keeping track of the fulfillment state and the product create state. And then we have a change log down here, which is basically just a stack that records all the changes. And so what I've been working on is I've been working on a handful of little methods here. In fact, one thing I should probably do is I actually don't really need that anymore. So I can get rid of that, and I can get rid of that. And I can go ahead and use C, let's see, C.timestamp for all this stuff. Actually, you know what I could do, just to make this a little bit easier on myself? I'm going to go to my, let's see, where is this? My users on abstractions. Protocol. I'm going to create a little, I'll go ahead and create, let's see, a static class here. Public static change log entry. The change log. We'll go and do this. User change event key. And let's see. And I'll go ahead and return new changelog entry and also do an optional message. These are the sorts of things you just start discovering as you begin doing work with your underlying model here. So I'll go ahead and do e.identity for log source. I'll go ahead and do message, e.message. You know one thing I might do, actually? I should probably include the IP address in here somewhere. Yeah, you know what? Maybe I'll do that. The log source. Go ahead and do this. Okay. Now, one thing I don't quite like is that when we persist these changelog entries, although, you know, I guess rather than formatting this as a string, I guess I could go ahead and abstract this a bit more, which would basically go ahead and make it more of a structured event so I can change how it's rendered at a future point in time rather than having to like parse a string. That's probably a better way of going about this. So I'm going to go ahead and add a comment here. To be structured 100% string based. So I'll go ahead and make a note to go ahead and update that. And I guess we won't use the IP address just yet. Yeah, we'll just stick with that. So I'm still kind of in the process of trying to discover what's the best way of kind of reasoning about some of these events in my domain. So I can probably go ahead and get rid of these. What I'm going to go ahead and do is for my changelog, I can go ahead and do p.changelog. Oh, you know what? Actually, maybe I want to keep those. Set product into, you know, I'll just comment them out for now. That should work. All right, p.changelog still works. So I have a couple of different events in my protocol here I'm going to process. I have a create new product message, which basically, if I go and grab, let's see if I can grab my flowchart here. Looking at another tab. Let's see. Sdkbin product creation. Got that. Sdkbin actor hierarchy. Sdkbin purchasing. All right. Let's see. Well, this little flow chart that I have over here is kind of more about the fulfillment side of things, not necessarily. This is like actually filling in all the details on the product editor screen in Sdkbin. This is kind of what's going on here. That's not quite the same thing, but well, whatever. I'll go ahead and just show it. So, all right. So the first thing we have to do, which is what we're dealing with here, is a product is created and assigned a product type. So if I'm selling a NuGet package, that's a product type. If I'm selling an NPM package, that's a product type. If I'm selling a support plan, that's a product type. And they're all discretely different types that have different fulfillment. So NPM and NuGet are both packages, so they have some common traits, but they're using different protocols to be delivered. So they have just slightly different fulfillment types, although they follow a lot of overlapping behavior there. Whereas a support plan is a very different animal from a package distribution. So the way the fulfillment service works, and actually which fulfillment service you talk to, is going to be very different for how you set those up. Now let's go back into here. And let's take a look. Actually designing some messages. So the first message we're going to process is this create new product. This basically creates the product's ID, creates its name, and everything else. If someone tries to create two products with the same name, that'll be rejected. Actually, let me rephrase. Two products with the same name are actually all right as long as they come from totally different vendors. But the canonical ID that we use has to be unique. So if someone tries to create another product that already exists, it'll be rejected out of hand. And that reminds me, maybe at some point in the future, we need to add some stronger, let's say, safeguards in place to make sure you can't go and squat someone else's name. That might be something we have to do. So here, I'm basically saying, okay, as long as our status is empty, or more accurately, the way I'm expressing this, if someone tries to pass in a second create new product message, when our status is anything other than empty, we're going to go ahead and return a validation error. And we return a little tuple, which is the new product state, an operation result, which is what's going to be sent back to the original requester. And then we also have a little Boolean value here called updated. If that Boolean is false, it means that the event didn't get processed. Presumably, let me go ahead and change this here too. Presumably because there was something illegal in the validation rules here. And these little validation messages right here get passed into our op result. So what we're going to do is when we receive this create new product message, we're going to go ahead and add a new change log. We're going to go ahead and take our original product state, and we're going to go ahead and use the with syntax, which is what we use in record types, to basically go ahead and immutably kind of create a new copy that's going to go ahead and have these new modified properties on it. So we're going to go ahead, modify that, and then we're going to return the new state, the opcode, and then we're going to go ahead and return true to indicate that this got processed successfully. And then I've got another one down here for setting the product kind as well. And we've got some switch statements to go and validate that we're in the right state to go ahead and process this. We're going to go ahead and basically return with our status code and everything to make sure this is all valid, et cetera, et cetera. And then I don't really have any actor code so far. This is all just kind of product state. I'm actually testing, if I go down to my sdkbin.domain tests, I'm basically testing that our domain messages can be processed correctly. We're gonna go ahead and do user change event. And we'll go ahead and call this create product. And I'm gonna go ahead and prettify this code a little bit using static publisher. Actually, what I want, not publisher fulfillment protocol. It's gonna be the product update protocol. And this is called create new product. All right. Publisher update protocol. Okay, and then Resharper should be able to figure this out. Okay, well maybe not. Sdkbin instructions. Go ahead and go to this. Let's see, that should go through. Oh, it's product update protocol. There we go. All right. That looks good. And then we'll go ahead and do a second one using static. Go ahead and grab this. There we go. All right, that looks a little nicer. I need to pass in a user identity, a message, and then my payload. Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and create, let's see, a little helper. Let's see, class, user identity. I could look at those test helpers. Yeah, sure. These are all records. I'm going to go ahead and make this read-only. Default user identity. All right, and then for user ID, we'll go ahead and do I am rook. Well, actually, we'll do that for user identity. We'll go ahead and do equal rare 11.1. We'll do I am rook for the username. Email rook@gmail.com. We're not sending any emails or anything, so that should be all right. Can now convert type Sdkbin abstractions. Really? My user identity. Ah, that's good to know. There we go. Now it should work. Perfect. Okay, test identity. Products.domain.tests. Yes. Did that. Test identity. Then let's see what else is good here. Message. New, create product. Then let's see what goes into this. Product ID. Phobos 01. A new navigation name. This will go ahead and be Phobos. All right, and then I need to go ahead. Also create new publisher data. Bridge. Stored file. All right, and then that should do it for my event. What else do I need to pass in here? Let's see. 5 parameters was invoked with 4 arguments. Is that it? Let's see, I must be missing a parentheses. Publish your data, create product. Ah, okay, I see. Call this our user event. Great. Okay, that looks all right. So one thing I'm seeing already in terms of things we have to add to our domain is enforcing uniqueness constraints. We don't really have any protection in place for that at all right now. That's something you kind of take for granted when you're working in a primarily database-driven environment, but we're going to need to go ahead and enforce that here. And really, it should be the sum of these two navigation names, the URI select Petabridge, URI select Phobos. Those two really should combine to form the unique product ID. So this product ID should really be something like Petabridge Phobos. That would really be the unique product ID. Although that's technically illegal for for a persistent ID. But I digress. So that really should be how we kind of structure it. All right, we got everything created. Next, I'm gonna go ahead and act for, let's see, new state, not result, updated. It's gonna be product. Actually, I guess it would be product state. Process new product, and this will be product here, and this will be user event. Okay, let's go ahead and process it. Assert new state change log dot total entries. Good. You want. Let's go ahead and run that first. We should have a new entry in the change log. I'm probably, by the time I get done kind of validating my models of simple unit tests, I'm probably going to write an FS check model written spec. Okay, so we had an assertion fail. Product.display does not equal null. All right, let's take a look at that. If original.createStatus does not equal product.createStatus.empty, okay, so that line of code should never be run. So why did that happen? Oh, that's why. Having the things start in the wrong state. Okay. So you don't ever let anyone tell you that a silly unit test like this adds no value. All right, let's give that another try. Okay, perfect. Wonderbar. That was good. Okay, let's go ahead and do a couple more little simple assertions. New state dot. Actually, let me go ahead and do one other one. Op results should be true. Want to validate that the op result we send back to the client indicates success. I want to go ahead and make sure that my, let's see, product data, in fact, these two should actually be the same, come to think of it. Product data dot, let's see, publisher data equals create product event publisher data. All right, let's go ahead and run that. Bingo, that all works. I'm going to go ahead and suppress my little nullable warning there. Oh, whoops. That should be should. Should be. Let's go on that. Remember, record types use equality by value, so I don't need to worry about custom equal stuff here. If I get rid of that. Okay, perfect. That's all looking good. Sweet. New state dot product data dot display dot name could be let's see, create product event navigation name. Go ahead and run that. Looks good. I'll go ahead and leave one of these here. Actually, you know what? It might be better for me. Yeah, let's go ahead and use a pragma to disable that warning throughout the entire file. I'd rather have the unit test suite explode anyway. All right, but this looks good so far. So it looks like our first event that we wanted to process was done successfully. Now, another thing I could go ahead and do, just to make this a little nicer, add the this keyword here and turn this into an extension method. Yeah, I think I'll go ahead and do that, and I'll do that in here as well. Now, one thing I might go ahead and do is if I can go ahead and get this to run in order, I might create a little X unit fixture that allows me to go ahead and build up the same model over and over again. X unit. I've used these a whole bunch in my day-to-day work here, but it's been a little while. Okay, here we go. We're going to take a look at a class fixture in X unit. When you want to create a single test context and share it amongst all the tests in the class and have it cleaned up after all the tests in the class have finished. So we want to go ahead and basically kind of iterate on this fixture. Yep, all right. So we'll go ahead and create. Let's see. I don't really need to make it disposable. I'll go ahead and give this a try. Let me go ahead. Yeah, what I kind of want to do is I want to be able to go and create a little bank of events that are all going to get processed. And I want to be able to go ahead and kind of iterate through them. This would actually be a lot easier in N unit. I can just go ahead and assume everything's going to run in the same... all the tests in the same class are all going to run together. But I'm kind of an X unit guy, so I got to figure out how to make this doable here. All right. Well, I guess if I do it this way. The other way, of course, I can do it. Just one giant test suite. Two. Public. Last. Guess I'll go ahead and call this guy making a fixture. Okay. Go ahead and pull this up. Public class. State. Ooh. All right. State. Okay. And I'll go ahead and create a constructor here. And we'll go ahead and say this is equal to. Yeah. Go ahead and do that. Class fixture. Product state fixture. That way we can basically make the state mutable between tests is what I'm kind of trying to do. So we'll go ahead and do public. Fixture. Actually, you know what? Let me go ahead and do it this way. Private. Only. Do that. Public. Let's see. Get. Okay. Sure. All right, I'll do that. Well, okay, that looks good. So if I go ahead and do this, get rid of that. State. Let's go ahead and try running this. See how it goes. Looks good. Okay. Should create product first. Good. Create a set product kind second. Go ahead and copy a little bit of that. Let's see. We'll go ahead and do set product kind event. If anyone has any questions about the domain models or why I'm doing things a particular way, please let me know. Let's see. Set product kind event. All right, so I need to pass in my product ID. In fact, here's how I should do this. Product state of product ID. New get product. I guess maybe new get product. Yeah, there we go. Set product code. New get. Okay. All right, that should go through. Go ahead and do process and set. Then we'll go ahead. We should be up to 2 entries in the change log. Let's just go ahead and validate that real fast. Oops. Result. I'm going to go ahead and also just validate. Now, these unit tests don't have to stick around for forever. I could go ahead and throw these away and replace them with integration tests eventually. But when we're doing like a bit of bottom-up development, like we are right now, this is really helpful for making sure a lot of the basics inside your system all work. Let's go ahead and give this a shot. I should be cooking right now, but this is transfixing. Well, thank you. Expected op result dot is success to be true, but found false. Okay, well, let's go ahead and set a little breakpoint and see why that is. Let's go ahead and do debug. Could be that my assumptions about the way XUnit are working here are wrong. That could certainly do it. All right, op result. Bad request. Let's take a look at the validation messages. Cannot set product kind to NuGet product for product Phobos 0 as this product has not been created yet. All right, so let's take a look at our product state. Yeah, it looks to me like none of our data from the previous run got preserved at all. So I wonder if I need to mark this as iDisposable. Sure. All right, let's try running this again. Because basically XUnit's a little bit particular. Oops, I gotta probably stop that. XUnit's a little particular about how it does this. It actually recreates this test class every single time. Class fixture, product state fixture. Oh, goodness gracious. I know what we're doing wrong. Holy cow. Okay. Well, this is a little dirty, but I basically need to say state equals new state at the end of this test. That's what I gotta do. Okay. Well, let me go ahead and run all these now. Oh, you know else why it wouldn't work? I've got to run the entire test suite in order to make this work. Jeez. Maybe I'd be better off using NUnit for this stuff. That way I don't have to kind of wire this all together. Although, yeah, this is kind of a little bit of a problem. I'm basically kind of using a little bit of a builder pattern right here. And so if you run any one of these tests individually, they'll fail. So I got to make sure all these tests all run together in sequence. So maybe a better way for me to go about doing this is I can go ahead and create an XUnit. Let me see if I can remember what the syntax is for doing this. Test cases is what I want to see. Let's see. It's not the sharing context between tests. Configuration files, class, collection fixtures, capturing output. Let's see, docs. There is a way to do this. Let me remember. XUnit. Let's see. Trying to remember, there's a way to go ahead and create some test cases here. Let's see. Dang it, dang it, dang it. I'm Googling off on the other screen on my left here. I'm trying to remember how to do this. Let's see. Well, might be class fixtures, collection fixtures. There's a way when using XUnit theories to be able to go ahead and pass in, let's say, a set of dynamically provided arguments, and we can go ahead and do all sorts of testing that way. Let's see. XUnit test cases, XUnit theory, test case, test data. Aha, here we go. All right, this is what I was looking for. I'll drop a link to this chat. I've used this feature before, but I don't use it very often, so I tend to forget. But we want to go ahead and use the member data. So basically, I can specify a theory, and I can go ahead and pass in. This is using inline data, which really only works for compile time constants. If you want to pass in, which by the way means you can't use like custom classes. But if you want to go ahead and use class data, which allows us to go ahead and return basically a set of test data here, this is something you can go ahead and do pretty easily. So I can go ahead and pass in my little test data generator, and this will go ahead and kind of map everything onto there. Yeah, this looks good. Let's see. Get numbers, data, person A, person B, person C. Okay, perfect. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and basically get a little bit more sophisticated with my unit testing now. Now that we've been able to cut our teeth a little bit. And I want all my test cases to basically be pretty whole for the most part. So let's see. The other way, of course, I can go about doing this is I can go ahead and create, like a class that has a set of hard-coded events that are built into it. That way I'm not constantly doing those up in every test method. And I can just play with the order in which those are created. In fact, I think I'm going to do that. That might be an easier way of doing this, actually. So yeah, let me get rid of fixture. Get rid of that. Don't need that anymore. Oops, I think I deleted something that I needed. Yeah, you know what? I will go ahead and keep this, but this will go ahead and be get rid of that. We'll just go ahead and start with basically brand new state. That way I want to have all my tests in the test suite be able to run independently from each other and not have this dependency on state between tests. So I go back to my little test helpers. Test identity. I'm going to go ahead and do, let's see, you know what? Let me go ahead and go split screen here real fast. Get some screen real estate back. Okay. Go ahead and do public static read only, create a product. All right, go ahead and get rid of this. And then you know what? I'm gonna grab all my using statics here. I guess stick all of them back over here. All right, that looks good. Navigation name. Import that. Oh dang. You know what? Maybe I should go ahead and rather than making this a static read-only property, here's what we're gonna do. we're going to go ahead and just return yeah, you know what? We'll go ahead and return string product ID. Let me go ahead and break the line on this real fast. We'll just go ahead and return the product ID right there. So we'll make this a method rather than a static property. And then I'll go ahead and do public static. Let's see. User change event. Key. Let's see. App user event. And we'll go ahead and make this a key. Update. Actually, let me take a look at this. Product update message. Okay, that's what I'm looking for. I guess in theory, I don't really need that. And then let me go ahead and grab all this junk down here. Go to return E EV. I can go ahead and do, I guess, EV.string. EV's not nullable though. We'll go ahead and assert this then. Okay. Possible null reference for argument message. Okay. Well, you know what? Got enough of that. User event. Okay, that should be all right. So then if I go over here, let me grab my set product kind event as well. Do public static. I can get rid of that. We'll go ahead and do a set product kind event. So basically I want to be able to mix and match these events. I want some bad. I want to have some bad states that don't make any sense. And some good ones that do. I don't really care about making the data all that dynamic right now. It's more important to go ahead and just kind of experience seeing that the model is doing what it's supposed to. And I guess I gotta... Did I do this right? Oh! Set product kind, 3. All right, that looks good. Okay, let's see if this helps simplify things for me at all. So I'll go ahead and say, get rid of that. Here's what I'll do. I'll go ahead and say user event equals create product event, or excuse me, product. Crap, I already forgot what the name of this method. Create new product event. All right. Let me go ahead and grab this. Create a product event. Date. Product ID. And then I guess I need to go ahead and call test helpers. New user event. All right, there we go. That all looks good. And I'll go ahead and say var create product event equals user event payload. Let's go ahead and run that. Gotta get rid of that. Yeah, I gotta delete that line. Okay. go and try running that. Now this is what we're going to do. So basically some functional programming. This is where some currying and some other F# goodies would really come in handy. But unfortunately, I'm stuck in the land of C#. So we got to do this the old-fashioned way. I'm going to go ahead and create my create new product event. And then user event 2 is going to be my, let's see, set product kind event. Ah, goodness. Okay. Create set product count. Let's see. State product ID. User. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and do new state 1 equals state.process. So we have to go ahead and kind of test everything that came before. And then this is where something like currying would be really nice. If I have to come down here and I gotta do new state 2 equals, guess what? It's gotta be new state 1 dot process kind set user event 2. So we're basically kind of folding the state in down here. Let's go ahead and actually run this now. And the test passes. So basically what we have done is we're basically taking, all right, the state that we begin with, we go ahead and process this first event here to create it. Then we go ahead and we process setting the kind, and that should work. And so one of the things we can kind of do, if I wanted to do some model-based testing, is we can go ahead and basically randomize the order of these operations. And it'd be pretty easy for us to go ahead and find combinations where a validation model may not hold up right. That's kind of one of the powerful things about these immutable models that we're building, is they play very nicely with sort of testing tools like that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and commit my work so far. Let's go ahead and move this over here. Let's see. Added first tests for a product state model. All right. Now bear in mind, like even though this is going to be production code eventually, we're still in the stage here. We're just trying to make sure that everything we want to express can be captured properly. So one other thing I could go and test for if I want is a negative case. Should not set product kind before create. If I go ahead and I get rid of user event 1, and I go ahead and I apply this onto state down here, I go ahead and I run it. Actually, let me say this should be false. Should be false. Should be 0. Let's go ahead and run that. Excuse me. All right, and that passes too. Good. That means our validation model worked. That basically our model rejected this change because it said, listen, you've got to apply this operation before you can apply this one. And we're just going to go ahead and reject it out of hand. That's kind of some of the stuff that I've been working on validating. Now, one last thing I want to do down here is do new state 2. Let's see, product data. I want to make sure my kind should be, then I'll go ahead and do set product kind event. Oh, you know what? Let me go ahead and shuffle this. User event 2.payload. And basically, this is going to make sure that these two kinds are the same at the very end down here. And that should pass. Great. All right, we're in good shape. Okay, now we've got a whole bunch of other methods inside our protocol that we haven't even added support for yet. So I'm testing all this independently of actors. I'm doing this without any type of persistence or anything right now. And this is going to make it a lot easier for me to make changes if I want. So if I go ahead and decide, you know what, like this validation code is dirty and I should go ahead and move it someplace else. Or if I decide I want to go ahead and simplify all my protocol objects I'm using so far, I can do that without having to write any updates to my repositories or my serialization code or anything else, because I add all that stuff last. This is how I recommend, if you're doing, let's say, big event-driven projects or actor model projects like with Akka.net, this is the place I kind of recommend that people start, is you want to get your messages and your state right first. And so that's kind of where I'm beginning with this. I've defined some service provider interfaces. I've defined a bunch of protocol classes for trying to go ahead and update some of my domain objects. And now I'm validating that the model that's going to go ahead and represent the aggregation of all those events, this is my point in time snapshot. I'm basically validating that this works the way it's supposed to. That's kind of where we're at here. So we've processed kind set. We've processed create new product. What is next in my little protocol? Let's see. If I go ahead and take a look at my product update protocol, we have to be able to process updates to the license terms. We got to process updates to price plans. We got to be able to go ahead. Let's see, we have create price plan, update price plan. What is different about these two? It's been a while since I've looked at these. Price plan update, nickname active. Oh, okay, that's right. This is for turning price plans off. You're never allowed to go through and change an old price plan, but you are allowed to go ahead and basically stop offering a price plan to new users. And you can also possibly have a user migrate from one price to another. That's something, actually, by the way, I should go ahead and capture it here. We do need way to express migration from old price plan to new one for so we need a way to go ahead and express a new price plan here. Okay, so basically if we want to migrate customers off of one pricing plan to another, we need some way of doing that, or we can just kind of let people use the old price plan in perpetuity if they want, unless they change their SKU somehow. Kind of depends. There's a number of different ways you can go about doing that. We kind of want to leave that up to the publisher to some extent. Okay. So let's see. Why don't I go ahead and, as part of the next part of my little protocol here, let's see. Let's go ahead and handle the fulfillment request. I think that'd be the next good thing to handle. So the fulfillment request is going to be another totally separate set of actors. So the product actor basically is going to own all the pricing information. It's going to own all the stuff you see in the product index and catalog. It's going to go ahead and own the licensing terms. And it basically is responsible for making sure the product has been fulfilled, but it does not own fulfillment. So fulfillment is basically the area of the domain where we determine how does a publisher of a product or service in Sdkbin, how do they actually deliver that to an end user? And so that is fairly domain specific in terms of it kind of varies by the types of products offerings that we allow on the platform. But we do need to have a generic protocol that basically lets our product publication system know before a product gets published in our index somewhere. We need to basically make sure the publisher has completed their fulfillment request. And this might be a very long running process, like connecting, basically publishing a NuGet package may not happen for several days after the product's originally drafted. So we need to go ahead and add support for that to our little product state too. So let's go ahead and do that next. Okay. So let's see, we'll go ahead and do a new signature. So I'll go ahead and copy this. Public static. Actually, I guess I didn't need to copy that. I'll go to new process. Create fulfillment request. And this should be, let's see, create fulfillment request. There we go. All right. Excuse me. Okay, so first thing I want to go ahead and check is our status if original dot create status does not equal kind set. That means we can't process this event in this state. Let's see, yeah. So if we're not in kind set, or fulfillment state does not equal. I don't know if I want to add support for being able to replace one fulfillment request with another. That seems complicated, and I can't imagine a scenario where we're going to need that right away, but it would be trivial to go and add it later if we did. It's one of the benefits of event sourcing. It's pretty easy to go ahead and introduce that type of optionality later. So why don't we just go ahead and stick with this for the time being? All right, so if we're not in the kind set stage, I need to go ahead and create, and grab this, a validation message that we're going to kick back to the user. Let's see, validation messages, add new validation message. We go ahead and save. Cannot receive, let's see, create fulfillment, well, not receive, create fulfillment request while in state. And here's the problem with some of the stuff that I'm doing right here. These are like developer messages, which make sense to us inside the Sdkbin team. These will confuse the hell out of an end user. So we're probably going to need to have some way of taking one of these validation messages, logging it inside our logging system, but we got to display something else to the end user. Thankfully, that's why we also return a negative status. I can kind of decouple the UI layer, how this message gets communicated to an end user from how it gets represented and inside our like little state processing system here. Let's see. Original.create status. And I'll go ahead and say error equals true. And I'll go ahead and bail out early here. Yep. Go ahead and, whoops, grab that. We're basically not going to bother processing this request if we're not in the right state. Now, if we are in the right state, I'm going to go ahead and do change log equals s to change log. Go ahead and save a copy of that. New state equals original with, and we'll go ahead and say fulfillment state is going to be, let's see, fulfillment request pending. And then fulfillment request is going to be equal to s payload request. I think that should be all right. Yeah, that should be fine. We're just copying that lock, stock, and barrel. So I'll go ahead and do return. We'll do new tuple here, new state, new op result, accepted, and we'll go ahead and pass in our empty set of validation messages there. And I'll go ahead and pass in, oh, you know what? I forgot to do this. I got to update the change log while we're at it. And I'll go ahead and include true. You know, I guess I should go ahead and do this. Let me do this. If original fulfillment state is not equal, not ready. Now, you know what? I forgot to do another important thing here. This is an immutable hash set, so I gotta assign it to itself. Go ahead and add this. Let's see. State. We want to go ahead and log both of these separately. All right. I'm going to go ahead and say, all right, if validation messages dot length Okay. Greater than 0. We'll go ahead and just bail. Original op result. Go ahead and say bad request. We'll include our validation messages. And then we'll go ahead and say false. All right. Capture 1. Okay, that looks good. We can go ahead and process our fulfillment request. That sounds great. Okay. Next, I want to go ahead, copy this. Let's go ahead and process. In addition to our create fulfillment request, let's go ahead and process our, I think it's complete fulfillment. Product update protocol. Fulfillment request completed. Okay. Process. Okay. Well, the first thing we want to go ahead and check is, let's see. And we're assuming for the time being the fulfillment is something that the publisher only has to set up once. Let's see, original to fulfillment state. It's not equal. No, request. Not equal S. Actually, I'll do these as two separate operations here. Let's see. All right. Let's do that down there. There we go. That should make that safe. And then I'll go ahead and say, all right. Got my validation messages up here. Received. Name of. Or product. Whoops. Not what I wanted. Let's see, go back down to here. This is getting a little long. Product with no matching. But never received any original fulfillment request. But it's false, or sorry, true. This is a validation error. What's this grumbling about? Oh. That's what that threw me about. Okay. Let's go ahead and do a little debug assertion there. Let's see. Original. Oh, sorry. Let's go do payload. This is a correlation ID that we're basically double checking here. So like this allows us to sort of canonically refer to like, hey, this fulfillment operation has this ID, and that represents, let's say, the provisioning of a NuGet package or the provisioning of a NuGet package, or maybe connecting Zendesk to Sdkbin or something like that. Let's see. Go. All right, there we go. We'll go ahead and perform our same little original check here. That should be good. Now, otherwise, we'll go ahead, copy some of this. We'll go ahead and say the fulfillment request is now complete. We'll go ahead and say fulfillment request equals original with, oh, sorry, original with let's see, requested items. What's on this message here? Request completed. Oops, didn't mean to do that. Just the completion state. Oh, that's another thing I gotta check. Whoops. Okay, so I need to go ahead. Need to add handling for failed fulfillment requests here. Good example of a failed fulfillment request. We go ahead and we try to connect to someone's Zendesk, and it turns out their API key doesn't have all the permissions we need. Or someone tries uploading a NuGet package that can't be verified via our virus scanner or something like that. And so there might be a number of reasons why that request might fail. Maybe we might also have a timeout. That might be another reason why that might happen. Let's see, with requested items. What all goes into here? Yep. Let's see. Quick definition. Requested items, product ID. Okay. Well, that should be fine. All that stuff. In that case, I guess I don't need to modify the original fulfillment request at all. So I can get rid of that. I'm able to say the fulfillment request is complete. All right, that looks pretty good. We've added support for that, so the fulfillment requests have been done. Let's go ahead and take a look. I'll go back to my product update protocol. Let's go ahead and work on doing things like updating the license terms. Let's go ahead and do that. And then let's see, there should be an operation for publishing products as well. Update screenshot, update logo, update product display text, set product kind, create product, update price point, update product status. That's the message I'm looking for. Okay, so basically this is going to be the most interesting one from a validation standpoint. We basically can't publish a product that's missing things like it has to have a pricing point, it has to have fulfillment, it has to have description, and all that sort of stuff. That's going to be another interesting one. Let's see, empty created, kind set, complete. Let's see, publisher fulfillment complete, all required data has been added. Okay, let me go and add to this then. Let's go ahead and add a test to basically see, all right, public static pool is product ready to publish this product state. Okay, so we gotta go ahead and return state dot fulfillment date equals complete and date dot, let's see, create status basically has to be greater than or equal to kind set and date dot, let's see, product data dot plans let's see, we'll do this. And this does not equal null. And state.product data. Plans. It's not empty. All right, so far, has to be in the right status, has to be fulfilled, has to have at least one price plan. Merge into a pattern, what does that mean? Whoa. That's pretty cool. This has to be some new C#9 syntax. I've never even seen that before. That's great. That eliminates a lot of the null check garbage and all that sort of stuff too. Maybe that's only something record types can do. Product data. Let's see. Display. Let's see. New pattern matching. Yeah, sure looks that way. Here, I'll highlight it. So this basically got rid of my null check and my check to go ahead and see that if the... So basically we want to validate there's got to be at least one price plan. What else I got to check? And state.product data.plans any active. That was cool. Yeah, I had zero clue that syntax existed. That's pretty neat. Let's see, product data.display. Yeah, this is very cool. This might be the area right here where maybe something like fluent validations would be helpful. Because I might have to go and break out each of these checks to go ahead and basically call them out individually if a user wants to go ahead and try to go ahead and publish a product. We need to be able to tell them why. Yeah. All right. Well, let me go ahead. Here's how I'm going to do this instead. Okay. Cool. Here's what we're going to do instead. Bar. We'll do it this way. Let's see. If we'll go ahead and rephrase it this way. Go ahead and add a little bit of string formatting here. Let's see. Okay, that's good. You know what? I'm just going to go ahead, rather than make this an immutable hash set, I'm just going to go ahead and do new hash set. That way I don't have to do this add syntax. I can just turn it into an immutable one at the very end. That'd make me feel a little happier while I'm doing this. All right. Create status. All right, we're going to go ahead and return early here. This. We'll go ahead and basically just do return false validation messages to immutable hash set. down here. The reason why we're bailing out early is if this check doesn't pass, if this check doesn't pass, none of the other stuff's good. Because you can't even set a price until you basically have a bunch of other fulfillment data created. So that's that's not going to go ahead and pass yet. All right, but if we make it down here, we're going to do all right. If let's see. Let's see. This is ugly, but I'm going to do it. I just invalidated all that cool syntax. Okay. Okay. Next, we're going to do if state let's see. Null or date product date display logo stored file dot none. Yeah. All right, go ahead and add that. If state dot product data terms dot license text null or product data terms length 0. All right. Alrighty. Oh, you know what? Dang, I think I also forgot to do here for all these validation messages is these are all supposed to be errors. And I have not been treating them as such. Yep, there we go. Right now, my default is that validation messages are not errors. However, the way I'm using it in practice sure makes it look like the only time I bother adding these is when they are errors. So maybe I should actually use them. Maybe I should change the default on that. Yeah, you know what? That's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to go and change the default. This is stuff you discover when you actually start using these classes a little bit when you're doing testing. So let me go ahead and change this to true. All right. Probably wouldn't include a validation message most of the time, unless it was an error. Okay. What else do I need to check? If state.productData dot terms display description actually there should be description text. Is null or text. So we're probably, just to give you a little preview here, All of this little validation code I'm adding here, I strongly suspect someone else on our team. Oh boy. That is some ugly, ugly, ugly stuff. There's got to be an operator that can null coalesce some of that. But it is what it is. My guess is there's going to be someone on our team who's probably going to go ahead and run a much more thorough version of this stuff on the real product publication thing. Because we've also got to go and take a look at, like, if the person published via Markdown, is their Markdown syntax valid? Is, you know, all that sort of stuff. There's all sorts of different little, like, when you get into the nitty-gritty of it, a lot more detailed types of validation that might need to be done behind the scenes. That is all true. What's nice is everything is decoupled enough here that we can go ahead and add that fairly easily without it being intrusive. We're not using a bunch of using necessarily a bunch of stuff that's very hard. That all this stuff is pretty easy to extract. In other words, you could use a little builder pattern to go ahead and build up a set of validation messages if you wanted to, and we could go ahead and enhance these to make them a little bit more descriptive about what the types of errors are. And we could potentially even do things like do diff checking on the product state if we wanted to. So there's a lot of different options we can explore in terms of where we want to take this. But this is something I'm going to spend probably some time over the next three or four live streams working on. I'm going to be working on this during the day too, by the way. So there might be some jumps over the course of our next few sessions. But this is real production grade code that I'm attempting to write here. And part of my goal in kind of sharing this and doing this live is A, to get feedback from all of you who are watching. B, to also kind of go ahead and actually demonstrate, here's what I think are some of the best practices for trying to build event source systems on top of systems like Akka.net and event sourcing and everything else. And also, I really find the Sdkbin domain to be quite interesting too. So I want to thank everybody for attending tonight. Really appreciate everyone joining me and participating in the chat as always. I really enjoy doing these. They help me relax quite a bit. And I look forward to doing the next one on Tuesday next week. In the meantime, if you have any additional questions for my, questions you wanted to ask about Akka.net but were too afraid to ask, please go ahead and either email me. It's aaron@petabridge.com. Or you can hit me up at Twitter. So it's Aaron on the web on there. And otherwise, plan on looking out for a YouTube video maybe the next week or two on that. Otherwise, thank you very much, everybody. I hope you all have a great night. And I will see you all on Tuesday. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.